Okay. Let's see, are we set up here? Looks like we are streaming. Let me make sure that I can pull it up so I can monitor the chat. Let's see, are we running? I am still making do with my portable setup on my laptop here rather than having my fancy setup at home. But what are you gonna do, right? What are you gonna do? Is it... Okay, are we live? Are we running? I'm just trying to make sure because it says we're streaming. There we go. Are we running? There we go. Okay. I think we are running. Yes. Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure before I start messing around with important stuff. So, hello. I'm Christiana Ellis, and I do lots of things, including YouTube videos and podcasts and D&D and all sorts of things. Right now, for my day job on a work project, I am here in South Korea. So for me right now, it is in the evening after work. It's almost 8 p.m. I know back in the States where I usually would be found stomping around, it's in the morning. But today I felt like I wanted to unwind a little bit by doing one of my favorite things, which is making Dungeons and Dragons characters. I am a big fan of making Dungeons and Dragons characters. Not just Dungeons and Dragons. I am relatively new to many forms of tabletop role-playing games, but I do definitely enjoy Dungeons and Dragons. It's the one I'm probably most familiar with. You know what? Let me turn off that air conditioner, make sure that's not making too much noise. But I just find it a very entertaining and kind of relaxing thing to do to make characters. And so I figured, why not just have a stream where I do that? And if you are watching and you want to join in the chat, I am monitoring that, and we can talk about how you like to make characters, or maybe you can make one of your own with me. But because I don't have any specific character in mind to start with today, I decided that it would be fun to do a random dice-based rolls to start with. So I'm not even going to do them. Well, you know what? Let's not even roll the numbers and then assign them to categories. Let's just go straight down the line. I'm going to do the standard 46 minus 1 method for building stats. If you are watching this and you're not familiar with the rules and so on of D&D, toss questions in there. I'd be happy to answer those. But in the meantime, I'm just going to go straight down the line and roll for each and see where the stats land. And maybe from there, we'll decide what kind of character it would make sense to make. So I'm using a little dice roller app. And I'm going to roll 46 to start. And so the rolls came up with a 2, a 4, a 3, and a 5. So with subtracting the lowest one, that would be 4, 3, and 5. So that's a 12. So we've got a strength of 12. And so let's roll again. So that's a 3, 2, 6, 3, which is going to actually be another 12. And then number 3, we've got 6, 2, 1, and 4. So that's another 12. Getting a very well-rounded character so far, which gives us a lot to work with. Okay, so fourth stat, 6, 5, 1, and 3 for intelligence. And so that is our first higher stat here. So we got a intelligence of 14. And now for wisdom, 2, 6, 3, 1. So that's not one of the better ones. I guess that's still just 11. All right, and then last but not least, charisma, 2466. So that one's a little better too. So that's going to be 16. So let's take a look at these stats then. First of all, we're doing pretty well, all things considered. These are fairly good starting stats. They're all above, like 11 as the lowest one. That's not bad at all. And so using these starting stats, we obviously could go in a lot of different directions, especially depending on what race we select and that sort of thing. We're going to have a lot of flexibility to make just about any kind of character we could want. But with charisma as the highest one by kind of a significant amount there, especially if we go with a race that gives us a charisma bonus, that's going to make us in a prime position for a good character of one of the charisma-based classes. And so that could be a paladin, a sorcerer, or a warlock, or a bard. So let's take a look at I'm using the D&D Beyond character builder. I'm a big fan of D&D Beyond. I really enjoy that service and just the interface and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and just do standard character build here. Now the first thing that it asks us to do is to enter the name, but I feel like I don't know the name yet, so we'll come back to do the name later. The choices that we have early on here, we want to allow homebrew, we want to allow critical role content, playtest content. I figured just let's go ahead and leave everything enabled. Advancement type, hit point type, I don't feel like any of those are really important for a character like this where we're not playing in a specific campaign with specific requirements. So we'll just leave the name and portrait as a blank now for now too, and come back on that once we know a little more about this character. All right. So now we have lots of choices. Look at all those races. So here's where we have lots of choices. If we were trying to take our stats that we started with here and really optimize, if we really wanted to try to make this character the most effective that they could be, we would probably want to pick a class like maybe the Tiefling or one of the other classes that, or one of the other races that provide a charisma bonus. And so let's take a look at that. We don't have to worry too much about being well-rounded from other choices because we started with pretty good stats. So let's go ahead and try to focus on that charisma. So let's think about which races are going to help us with charisma here. So if I recall, the Aasimar gives +2 to charisma. So that's one option. I believe the Tiefling also gives us 2 charisma. There's a couple of variants of Tiefling, obviously. There's a lot more of them now, too. I think some of the new, like the Ravnica and Eberron options have given us a lot of new choices that I don't actually know all of the details about. But yeah, we get a 2 charisma from a regular Tiefling. And I think some of the let's just do a quick one through. Dragonborn gives us a +1 to charisma. And let's see. Changeling, 2 charisma. Yeah, so that would be another good choice. Let's see. I believe the Genasi, I want to say, get like 1 charisma. Maybe it's different depending which. Yeah, I think it might be different depending on which element you go with. Yeah, or maybe I'm wrong. But I think there might be an elf type as well that gives charisma. I think maybe the Eladrin gives charisma. Nope, I'm wrong. All right, well, You know what? Let's not belabor the issue too very much, because we don't have any sort of outward constraints on us here. So let's think about the Aasimar, which are the Aasimar and the Tieflings are kind of interesting pairings, because the lore as presented in the handbook and everything goes to some length to say that even if Tieflings are in theory the product of people with devils in their ancestry, it doesn't mean that Tieflings are evil. Likewise, in theory, the Aasimar, if they are humans that, or other races theoretically, that have celestial in their ancestry, but that doesn't necessarily make them good, I guess. Aasimar, I believe, feels it. I think it's territory that's a little bit more unexplored. So let's maybe take a look at the different options for Aasimar. So fallen Aasimar, placed in the world to serve as guardians of law and good. Their patrons expect them to strike at evil, lead by example, and further the cause of justice. And then protector Aasimar, placed into the world as guardians of law and good. Patrons expect them to okay, well, so that's the same, I think. Might be, is that the same for all 4 of these? Maybe. Let's see. Yeah, so that first paragraph at least is the same for all of these. Let's see. So the Scourge Aasimar, imbued with a divine energy that blazes intensely, feeds a powerful desire to destroy evil, a desire that is at its best unflinching and at its worst all-consuming. Okay, so that's interesting. So let's look at the different kinds here. Variant here. So yeah, this is an older sort of model, so to speak, from the Dungeon Master's Guide. Let's use one of these main 3. So we looked at the Scourge. So the Protector Aasimar are charged by the powers of good to guard the weak, strike at evil wherever it arises, and stand vigilant against the darkness. And they receive advice and directives. So that's kind of interesting. I feel like the Tiefling counterpart doesn't really have that piece, the idea that they have like a celestial patron that actually helps them in an ongoing way. An Aasimar who is touched by dark powers as a youth, or who turns to evil in early adulthood, can become one of the fallen, a group of Aasimar whose inner light has been replaced by shadow. Now that's interesting, and it's a good option to have, but it feels a little bit edgelord for where my head's at today. So I feel like I'm maybe more interested in a good character. And a good character can have, we're not to say that a fallen Aasimar has to be a bad character, right? But I was actually intrigued by a tweet thread that I saw earlier today where people were talking about wholesome D&D characters that don't have tragic backstories. And I kind of like that. So let's maybe explore that idea of something, a character who is out there in the world adventuring, putting themselves at risk to help people, but not because they're driven to it by some tragedy in their backstory, but just out of a genuine desire to help people, right? So let's think about that. So if we're looking at a protector, see, Scourge sounds more like let's go punish evil. Protector sounds more like helping good people. So punish evil people versus help good people. So I think, given what I was just saying, Protector seems a little bit more like the flavor I'd be interested in. So let's look at this. So we would getting +2 charisma, which will bring us up to 18 just to start, which is pretty good, even at level 1 to get up to 18. So we have Dark Vision, which I believe we all get that. Celestial Resistance, Healing Hands, Light Bearer. So our charisma is up by 2. So Aasimar would reach age of adulthood earlier, but live up to 160 years, so a little bit more longer lived than humans. Most Aasimar are good. Same range of height and weight as humans. Speed 30 feet, standard. Dark vision, 60 feet, that's the standard dark vision. Celestial resistance is resistance to necrotic damage and radiant damage. So that's pretty nice, and that's certainly a useful thing for any character who's maybe going to be fighting like undead or necromancers or anything like that. Healing hands, so action can touch a creature, cause it to regain a number of hit points equal to your level. And then, yeah, okay, so a little bit healing, even if you don't choose a class that focuses on healing spells, you could still have some healing abilities. You know the light cantrip. Languages, no common and celestial standard. You'll also get a wisdom +1. Okay, and then Radiant Soul. Now this starts at 3rd level, so if our level 1 character wouldn't have this yet, but we'd have it to look forward to. So starting at 3rd level, use action to unleash the divine energy within yourself. Your eyes to glimmer, 2 luminous incorporeal wings to sprout from your back. Pretty cool. Lasts for a minute, and during it you can fly. Nice. And once on each of your turns, do extra radiant damage to one target when you do damage to it. And it equals your level. So starting at level 3, you would do 3 extra radiant damage once per turn. That's pretty good. And fly. That's nice. And you can't use it until a finish a long rest. So you'd be limited to doing that once per day. It only lasts a minute. Still very cool. You know what? Let's go ahead and just choose this race. All right. So now we're a Protector Aasimar. This is all of the various traits that we just kind of read through. So we'll go ahead and move on to class. So because we kind of decided to focus on something that's going to really make the most of these stats we have, that's going to put us in looking at Sorcerer, which is charisma based, Warlock, charisma based, Paladin, or Bard. I feel like in some ways Paladin feels almost like the Protector Aasimar, the character who really wants to go out there and do good for the world and protect people. Like Paladin certainly is one, very straightforward way to approach that. But you could do that with any of those classes. Let's look at Warlock though, because Warlock, while most of the patrons, the Warlock patrons, would seem to be at odds with some of this, there is also a Warlock Celestial patron. And so that could be kind of interesting. Also, it would theoretically be an interesting challenge to have a character who really desires to do good but ends up with a Warlock patron that is maybe somewhat opposed to that. Like maybe not. It's hard to imagine a character who is noble and we're not going edgelordy. Hard to imagine how they would end up with a devil patron, say, but a Fey patron. But I think Celestial patron is an interesting idea. So let's explore that. Let's explore that. The idea that this character wants to do good for the world, and perhaps they encountered a powerful Celestial, or maybe it's even tied to the Aasimar's whole patron concept. Actually, I want to go back and read about that a little bit. So maybe we just literally tie those two things together. Let's go back and read about that really quick though. Protector Aasimar details page. Okay. So, Aasimar guides. An Aasimar, except for one who has turned to evil, has a link to an angelic being. That being, usually a deva, provides guidance to the Aasimar. Through this connection, functions only in dreams. Okay, so that's the standard idea, and I like that, but that maybe just ties right in to this ties right into this idea of a warlock with a celestial patron. Maybe in dealing with this this Aasimar's guide. Perhaps this character at some point made contact with this guide and asked, how can I pledge my life in service to you in order to help more people with more power? And like maybe that's how they became a warlock. I like that idea. So let's do that then. Let's go ahead and pick warlock. All right, and so let's look at what that's going to give us here at level 1. So our hit points, we get a D8, which is, you know, it's not the lowest, but it's also definitely not the highest. And then as far as our constitution, a constitution of 12 means we're not going to be hurting too much in terms of total hit points. We'll be doing okay there. And then so we get to choose some proficiencies. We'll be able to only wear light armor, simple weapons, but a character like this, probably weapons are not going to be their first real thing, right? Like that's not going to be their main thing. So we got wisdom and charisma saving throws is what they're good at. That means wisdom is great, which means they're going to be good at fending off charms and stuff like that. Deceptive type spells, controlling spells. So 2 skills from this list. Well, I think religion makes sense to pick based on what we've discussed. And then let's also say, I don't know, I like history. I like that. The idea that perhaps this character has received a lot of historical insight from their patron. So otherworldly patron, this is where we're going to go ahead and choose. There's lots to choose from, but based on what we've talked about so far, let's go ahead and pick the Celestial. So this is going to give us a few things here. So we, at first level, we learn the light and sacred flame cantrips. Now that's a little bit of an overlap because we already know light from being a protector Aasimar, but you know, that's okay. But we know light and sacred flame. It's a good standard damage cantrip, although if we pick Eldritch Blast, I can't imagine we're going to prefer sacred flame very often, but something that's really hard to hit perhaps. Or some other quirk, but yeah, you never know. So what else do we get here? So we got healing light. This is a warlock thing, celestial warlock. So channel celestial energy to heal wounds. Pool of D6s that you use to feel this healing equals 1 plus your warlock level. So it would only be 2 at level 1. But you can heal a creature you see within 60 feet of you, spending dice from the pool. And you can spend, you could spend 1 or both of them at the same time, since our charisma modifier is higher. So you just roll the dice and restore that much. So in addition to any actual healing spells we now have both the Aasimar and the healing light abilities. So this is potentially a character that maybe is going to be pretty useful as a party healer. So Pact Magic. This is another significant choice. Oh, you know what? I think we don't select a pact until level 2 for warlocks. Oh, hello. I see we've got KGD&D in the chat. Hello, welcome. We're just making characters here just for fun. Feel free to ask any questions or play along or whatever the spirit moves you to do. Whatever your celestial patron moves you to do. Let's you know what? Let's go ahead and finish making the level 1 character, but then maybe we'll explore what the choice would be at level 2 when we choose which pact. But so to start with, we get to pick some spells. Spells. I'm going to add spells. The spells we have as a level 1 celestial warlock. So we can pick 2 cantrips. We already know that we have Sacred Flame and we have light, and then we can choose 2 additional spells that would be first level spells. Now, Eldritch Blast is like the standard warlock spell. Just, I think part of it is just that from a mechanical perspective, it's almost just too useful to not take. It's long ranged, it does a fair amount of damage, it scales up really well. I believe it's force damage, which very few things are immune to. Yeah, force damage. And when you select your pact, you can choose some Eldritch invocations that make it even more powerful. So it's hard to... It's a very tempting spell to choose for that reason. So let's look at what some of the other choices are, just to see if there's 2 others that I feel like I really have to have more than Eldritch Blast. So Toll the Dead is a pretty fun one. That's a relatively new spell. I think that's just from Xanathar's Guide. And so that one would do necrotic damage. And it does more damage if the thing you're using it on has been hurt already. And the characters have to do a wisdom saving throw. Sacred Flame is a dexterity saving throw. So it would be good to have different spells that target different strengths like that. Whereas Eldritch Blast is just an attack roll. So let's see. We've got Blade Ward, Booming Blade, Green Flame Blade. Those are all going to be primarily useful if we're trying to have this character be like really in the mix, right? Like on the front lines. And I think just based on what we've talked about so far, that's maybe not this character's main thing. So let's think about what this character's whole concept is. They're out there trying to protect the innocent and defend good people. So what sorts of things would they want to be able to do from these choices? So whoops. So here, let's go ahead and just use this filter if we want to look at cantrips just only first. That way this only will show us the cantrips. So all of these 4 are all sort of damage related. Prestidigitation is a good, useful utility one, and it does some neat things where you can flavor food, you can make little sensory effects, you can heat and warm or heat and chill things, make little marks, make little non-magical trinkets that last for a little while. You can clean things. I feel like that would be a very useful spell for someone who's like taking care of people in trouble, right? Like refugees or something. Ah, yes, we got a few more people there in the chat. Welcome. Right now, we are just putting together a character for fun that we are, so far we've selected, we've got a Protector Aasimar, who's going to have be a warlock with a celestial patron. I think by flavor, we're looking for someone who's really out there to help people. And that's their primary raison d'etre. I'm pronouncing that extremely poorly, I am sure. And so I feel like if we want to imagine a character that was like helping refugees or something like that, I feel like prestidigitation has a lot of functions that would be useful there. Like someone's cold, well, what if you heat it up like a rock that they could sort of hold on to kind of warm them up. You can, light fires for them. I think, is this the one that can flavor food? Yeah, warm, chill, or flavor up to 1 cubic food of non-living material for an hour. And so you could, like, if they don't have very good food to eat, you could, help make the food a little more palatable. Like, so I think I like this one. Help someone get a little cleaned up if they've been out on the road for a long time. It just feels like it's a useful spell in a number of ways that aren't necessarily important in combat in any meaningful way, but do seem like they would be stuff that would be useful for someone trying to help the little guy. So if we've got that one, and we already have light, and we have Sacred Flame, But do we so Mage Hand is also would be, is nice and fun for utility. But, if we're making a D&D character, odds are they're still going to have to fight. So, I think, how can you turn down Eldritch Blast? I don't know if you can. It's just Eldritch Blast. Yeah, so Dr. Squigums in the chat concurs. It's like, if you're making a warlock, it's pretty hard to not choose Eldritch Blast. It's just too good mechanically. So we'll go ahead and leave it there. So we got, so for our known spells, Eldritch Blast, Prestidigitation, and as previously established, we also know Sacred Flame and Light from being a Celestial Patron warlocks. But let's pick 2 level 1 spells. And these are spells that, one of the interesting things about the Warlock class that's very different than any of the other spellcasting classes is that you have a smaller number of total spell slots, but as you level up, every spell you cast is automatically leveled up to a higher level. So mechanically, it's useful to choose spells that have an increased effect from being cast at a higher level, because they're going to get cast at a higher level no matter what when you cast them. So you might as well pick spells that are more powerful when cast that way. But, you also don't necessarily need to to base it on that if you have other spells you want to pick. But I'm just thinking, based on the flavor that we've talked about so far, protection from evil and good seems like it's the right flavor. And so it's protecting against aberrations, celestials, elementals, fey, fiends, and undead. To make, so once you cast this spell, but this is not one that casting at a higher level lets you do it like on more than one creature. So let's see what other choices we have. Unseen Servant is another fun one that's nice, and useful, and it is a ritual, but I don't think warlocks have ritual casting. Pact Magic. Oh, what you get ritual casting for sure if you do Pact of the Tome. Do you only get it though if you have Pact of the Tome? I think you have to choose a specific Eldritch Invocation to have ritual casting as a warlock. So it's not automatic. Cure Wounds Puppet. Are you calling me a puppet because I'm choosing the spells that you suggest? But yes, I agree. Cure Wounds, especially if, as we talked about a little bit ago, we've already got 2 other ways. We've got the Aasimar's healing ability. We've got the healing touch with the Warlock Celestial Patron. So if we want to just make this character a healing powerhouse, it's really going to take a lot of the weight for healing the party, then Cure Wounds is definitely a great one to choose, especially because it's also one of those spells that at a higher level you do more healing. So I agree that choose the puppet spell. Is that a level? I guess I'm not sure which spell you mean. Is there a puppet spell? I'm not sure. It's unlimited or UA. So Unearthed Arcana. Well, I turned on homebrew or like playtest material, but I don't think that one's here in D&D Beyond. I'll have to look it up though. I'm not familiar with that one. But let's see. So other spells that would be useful in this regard, like if we wanted another damage spell that could be helpful and do additional damage for being cast at a higher level, Guiding Bolt works for that. Does a fair amount of damage, and it's radiant damage, which very few things are resistant to radiant damage. And plus it has this neat effect where the next attack made against whatever you hit with it, gets advantage, because in my So Many Levels campaign that I run on Wednesdays when I'm back in the United States, we started calling this the Glitter Bomb spell. So that's fun. Hex is another sort of an offensive spell that you can make character or creatures have disadvantage on certain types of checks. I think that's a common warlock spell, but we have such a limited number here at level 1. So let's see what else we've got. Charm Person is a spell that I like personally for all sorts of characters, but the character that we've talked about so far doesn't. I don't know. Like, does that seem their speed? I don't know. I'm not sure it does. The idea of charming a mean person to, go away and leave someone alone could work, but I don't know. It doesn't seem necessarily like the best. So we looked at protection from evil and good, which I think is situationally useful. Like, it depends a lot on what kind of campaign you're going to be in. But let's see. Guiding Bolt, I feel like, is one choice. Protection from evil and good. Expeditious Retreat is a good spell, but I don't know if it's what we're looking for here. Armor of Agathys is another one that could be good. But you know what? I think I'm going to go with what my earlier instinct was, and let's say Guiding Bolt. Yeah, well, you know what? I think my very first instinct was protection from evil and good. If we're making this character for flavor and not just mechanical utility, even if we did pick Eldritch Blast just because, how can you not? Let's go with the protection from evil and good. Maybe this is a character who's going to be. Wouldn't it be fun to play this character in a Curse of Strahd game or something? I think that would be fun. So. We've got the class features and spells selected for level 1 here. And so as we go here, we're going to pick manual ability scores because we rolled them already, of course. And so this is where we're going to just type in our rolled stats. So we had 12, 12, 12, 14, 11, 16. So this is I think this character is kind of a force to be reckoned with in a lot of ways, because they've got pretty high stats in lots of things. And as we see here, when we add in the racial and ability improvement, well, we don't have any of the ability improvements yet, but the racial abilities that go on there, we end up with an 18 for charisma, which is pretty nice, especially when we get to an ability score improvement like at level 4, where we can go ahead and make that a 20, which is pretty nice because it makes the DC for your spells very high, gives you all sorts of advantages if you're playing these class like this. It's the big thing. But we've also, the wisdom isn't the highest. In fact, it's the lowest of our stats. But as a warlock, we have proficiency on wisdom saving throws, so that helps us a little bit there. And we're not too weak on any of these other things. This is a character that doesn't have really any big weaknesses. I'm a big believer in the idea that a character with a significant weakness can actually be really fun to play, and you shouldn't think of it as a bad thing. But hey, we decided to make this character with dice rolls, and so that doesn't mean we ignore them to make the character weaker just for the hell of it. All right, so we've got now the time where we're going to start filling in the detail here. So let's look at some of these Aasimar portraits that they suggest. So these 4 are the kind of the top ones. You absolutely, could, a character like this could be, male or female or non-binary or, whatever. So it could be any of those things, of course, but I think I am partial to a redhead character, just You know, I like red hair. So let's go ahead and pick that. And so let's look. Let's not. Yeah, let's go ahead and click randomize a couple of times and see if something looks really fun. Sooner, Franca, Ken, Sai, Trigvi. I'm not sure how to pronounce that one. Neon. Oh man, I feel like that would be a good name for a different character. Like, I'm already thinking about what character that would be. I like that name. Yenfanis? I kind of like the idea of having the character's like full name be something sort of long and flowery and pretentious sounding, but with something with like a really like easy, simple nickname too. Steve. Phaedrish? Yeah. Leonarda? No. Wazdars. Nislin. I like that one fair. I like it fair enough. So let's go ahead and stick with Nislin for now. So Nislin. We talked a little bit about the idea of our character being someone who from birth had this Aasimar celestial guide that communicated to them in dreams and helped to advise them and direct them to do good in the world. And we have a character who does not rebel against that. They're really a believer in that, and they want to go out into the world and help make it a better place. And we have them having chosen to go and specifically make a pact with this celestial to in a similar way as like a cleric might, swear like a holy, take sacred vows to become a cleric of their order, or a paladin makes their oath. And this is just a similar sort of arrangement. And it's different than it might be for, one of those things where it's a little bit more, I don't want to say that this is involuntary. It's more a matter of pacts with other more traditional patrons for warlocks, like a fiend or a great old one or something. Like part of what's interesting and kind of exciting and scary about those sorts of pacts is the idea that you are now beholden to this unpredictable and possibly evil creature. But a celestial, you can trust a celestial to want what is good. Celestials tend to be lawful, not always, but usually law and good. But that's not always, lawful good is one of those alignments that, you hear people talk about like lawful stupid or something like that. But I think in general, lawful, is not, shouldn't be thought of as a bad thing, just kind of how like, the flip side of, chaotic. Sometimes people use chaotic just to mean like, I do whatever I want and that's my character. But with the idea of lawful, I think is just the idea that maybe people benefit from order and stability. So who is this character? Like, other than the idea that their ancestry, their heritage has this celestial influence in it, how did they grow up? So let's look at the background here. What's some of the choices here? So Acolyte feels a little too on the nose. Let's see. So a lot of these I'm less familiar with because they come from like the Ravnica or Eberron settings that I've seen them a little bit, but I'm not as familiar with all the details. So you can kind of pick those out just by, they always have like Rakdos Cultist, Izzet Engineer, for example. So Urchin would be interesting for this. Like the idea of like a little orphaned kid growing up penniless, having to survive on the streets, but growing up from that to want to really do good in the world. Like the idea that it gave them a powerful empathy for other people who have had hard times. But then again, we also kind of said, like, part of, what I was saying at the conception is we want to not have it be like a sad backstory. And an urchin is not necessarily automatically sad in that classic way. It doesn't have to be tragic necessarily, but it kind of, the idea of how would they become an urchin kind of implies that, like, something must have gone wrong there. So let's maybe keep looking. Outlander certainly could work. Noble could work. The idea that someone grew up in privilege, but always sort of bucked against the idea of taking all that for granted. But I think doesn't feel quite right. Haunted one. Folk hero could be fun. Far traveler, courtier. You know what? I wonder if anthropologist. We did choose history earlier. What does anthropologist get us? What does it suggest here for that? Fascinated with other cultures. And you learn, adept. You can communicate with humanoids who don't speak any language you know. You know what? I think I'm going to back away from that one just a little bit, just because although you absolutely could make a great character like this. Welcome Gopher X in the chat. Aladdin was an urchin. He certainly was fun. Like, they don't linger on the idea of how he became an urchin. So, we may go back to that. But, the reason I was backing off of anthropologist here is we could certainly make someone who, whoops. What just happened there? Okay, I didn't want to, I don't want to approach territory of being like a missionary. Because I don't think that's what I'm looking for here, where someone is, specifically like going to all these strange cultures with the idea that you might want to convert them or something like that. And even if that's not how we played it, I feel like it feels like going down the wrong road a little bit. So, you know what? Maybe we do go with urchin, and we try to take that urchin thing and make it not tragic. Like, what if this was a character who did like grow up poor, but had some kind of like a found family sort of thing that was like, you know what? Just obviously earlier this month, Shazam came out, and if you haven't seen it, I really recommend it. I think it's great. But one of the things that I think is great about it is the idea that Billy in that movie is a foster kid. And he lives in this kind of home with a foster family who has lots of other foster kids. And the implication is he's been through lots of different foster homes. But one of the things that's really nice about it is that even though being a foster kid is not presented as like great in general, this particular foster home that he sort of lands in seems like a great place with a family that's not related by blood, but really love each other and support each other nonetheless. And so they are not what I would call urchins. But the idea that maybe having been an urchin from a very young age, but then having landed in a family that was perhaps still poor, but rich in love. So maybe I like that. So yeah, so urchin. Now it says alone, orphaned, and poor, no one to watch over you, so you learn to provide for yourself. Like some of that, I feel like, we don't have to use any of that. So I kind of like the idea of maybe there was some maybe there was some tragedy when they were very young, but then they found this wonderful found family and were able to really, through that, see the benefit of finding people who are having a hard time and helping. Like, they could really have this role model of their foster mother and father, of people who went into the world and found people who needed help and helped them. And so all of this stuff that we've built into this character, I like that idea. So Urchin kind of works with that. And so what do we get with that? So we get skill proficiencies in sleight of hand and stealth, and tool proficiencies in disguise kit and thieves tools. Now that implies that there's been some petty crime like pickpocketing and that sort of thing involved. And I wonder, I don't know if we have to work too hard at trying to explain some alternate explanation for that, because maybe that is part of what it is that this character, before they found this wonderful family, had gotten into some of that stuff, and then they learned those tricks, but then maybe they turned that into something else, like ways to help people. There's a character on one of my favorite actual plays is Dice Camera Action with DM Chris Perkins, and that's a great show. I really recommend that if you like. Urchin Warlock is Billy Batson. It totally is. I had no idea that we did. We totally just made Billy Batson, didn't we? I had all of the pieces and I didn't actually just connect it. Except I guess technically because we picked, I picked a female little profile there. You know what? Yeah, that's funny. So maybe this is Mary Marvel. Although we could also do, we could make it Billy, but no, let's go ahead and we can leave it as Mary, a version of Mary. But the idea that knowing the city secret paths and flows to the city, and the idea of maybe using, maybe the thieves' tools and disguise kit and sleight of hand and stealth, maybe that was started to becoming a thing of a way to help people who have had things stolen from them, to get them back or something like that. That's kind of fun. So let's see, suggested characteristics. We don't have to use any of these, but I feel like they're often fun to look at, to think about at least. Let's see. Hide lots of scraps and food or trinkets. Where I was going, though, before I got distracted, is that they had one of the characters in that show decided to put out a casting call for like the Chickenfoot Coven, and there were several characters that they chose, and I submitted one, but it didn't get picked. And one that did get picked was actually pretty similar to the one that I had designed, except it had a couple of details in there that were just genius, and I totally understand why they would pick that one instead of mine for those reasons, because one of the things that character did, it was a kobold who used the sleight of hand skill to give presents to strangers. By instead of being a pickpocket, they were a put pocket, is the way that they said it, is that they would make little presents for strangers and secretly sneak them into people's pockets. That's great. I love that. And so the idea that something like that for the sleight of hand is fun too. But let's see. I think these personality traits, I don't know. I'm not sure any of those really feel right to me. Ask a lot of questions, sure. Yeah, I like that one. Bluntly say what other people are hinting at or hiding. Yeah, sure, that could work too. I'll go ahead and add some of those. Ideals. Respect. All people, rich or poor, deserve respect. That sure seems useful. Community. We have to take care of each other because no one else is going to do it. Lawful. Yeah, I mean, that seems like it's exactly what we were just talking about, right? Now, the idea that everyone deserves respect, sure, is also true, but community, taking care of the community, that definitely seems like that's exactly what we're talking about, right? So, bonds. This town or city is my home, and I'll fight to defend it. Sponsor an orphanage to keep others from enduring what I was forced to endure. Well, almost. I think we would change that, right? Like maybe we edit that one a little bit. Yeah, let's pick that one, but then edit it to make it match better this foster home idea that we came up with. And then flaws, though. See, flaws, this character that we've selected, it could be easy to turn that character, if you're not playing them with complexity and nuance, they could just become a little bit of a goody-goody, and that could be boring. So what's a good flaw? This outnumbered, run away from a fight, gold seems like a lot of money, never fully trust anyone, I'd rather kill someone in their sleep than fight fair, not stealing if I need it more than somebody else. People who take care of them. The 5 seems like maybe the closest, in the sense of if someone has this really powerful feeling of, it's doing the right thing to take care of one another, would they potentially be judgmental when they feel like someone betrays those ideals? If we have like a lawful patron, that doesn't necessarily fit with that, though. So I wonder if, I'm not sure any of those flaws seem quite right. So what was Billy, so if we're thinking about Shazam, what was Billy's flaw? I think it was really kind of a lack of confidence, really, right? Like he was wounded and didn't want to let anybody in because he was afraid of being hurt. So he was closed off, was really his flaw. You know what? I wonder if maybe that's... No, see, I'm wary here of making anything that seems like it speaks to a deep reserve of inner pain, because that's really not what I was hoping to go for. I wonder if a better flaw might just be that this person is too trusting. Like, they are too likely to believe noble sounding but false explanations for things. And that could, the wisdom for this character is not super low, but it is the lowest of the, of the stats. And, yeah, I like that. So let's, adjust here. So flaw, always willing to believe a noble sounding explanation. Or maybe just we want to say always willing to give the benefit of the doubt. Even the third or fourth time. All right, yeah, that's good. And then let's adjust this sponsor, the foster home, to help others receive the joy of a found family like I did. Yeah, and that makes it a little happier. Now, I'm not opposed to the idea of people making characters tragic backstories. It's more just a matter of, Yeah. Like, it's not that there's anything wrong with making a character with a tragic backstory. It's just that a lot of people do that. So I think it's a nice idea to have some characters who are not that necessarily, and that doesn't necessarily mean they have to be, like privileged or out of touch or anything. Maybe they can be someone who really does care about helping people, but they just, like this Aasimar, they just seem to have something that, speaks to them. All right, so let's see. We could fill out a detail of the backstory, but I don't know. Let's not do too much of that right now. Physical characteristics, we don't have to do too much. We kind of already picked, let's say, I don't know, Hazel. Oops, not Hazer. And then, I don't know, average, I guess, 5'7". Yeah. So age. How old is this character? I mean, we've certainly been talking about them like they're young, but that's partly just because we're talking about like their upbringing, like their backstory. We learned a little bit about the Aasimar, that they reach the age of adulthood at the same time as humans. But I feel like this character has maybe been out there doing their thing for a little while. Maybe they're even in their 30s. Let's just say 30, 35. Female. All right. Whoops. Okay. Are we missing anything? Okay. And then starting equipment. I don't know, light crossbow. I don't know, I feel like simple weapon makes more sense. We've got plenty of ranged spells. We don't have to worry too much about ranged weapons. What's something that feels like it... Like a quarterstaff feels like it just doubles as like a walking stick. I like that. Do they have an arcane focus or a component pouch? I mean, mechanically, I think, doesn't matter that much. But just for flavor. Yeah, arcane focus, maybe they just have some sort of like a little trinket of the representation of their patron. And maybe it's a crystal. Yeah, sure, it's crystal. And let's give them a scholar's pack. Backpack, book of lore, sure, ink, paper, all that stuff, good stuff. Yeah, okay. And then we have a knife, a map, a pet mouse. Token to remember your parents by? Okay. Yeah, okay. Sure, all that's good stuff. And then we'll go ahead and get the standard. Oh, wait, I think I didn't choose something. What was that? Yeah, I think I didn't choose something, but that's fine. It's fine. Currency. Yeah, starting gold, 10 gold. All right. So here's our character sheet. And I think I was thinking about going ahead and doing a level 2 just to see what we would choose from there. But I don't know. I think this is a good start for a nice character. It's kind of fun discovering we had a secret influence in there that we sort of backed into. But that was fun. And so, we have an Eldritch Blast with a +6 to hit, which is pretty good at level 1. And that's going to do 1d10 damage. Plus, they have their healing hands. That's only 1 hit point. Oh, because it's, because that one's Warlock level. Yeah, so that one is the one that, is going to increase as you go. But then we also have the Healing Light, which is the 2d6 that you can do at range, which is pretty good. All right. Yeah, and Cure Wounds. So this is a character that I think could be a really good party healer, despite not being one of the traditional healer classes. So I think that's fun. So thank you. I think that'll probably do it for this episode of Character Creation Hour, but this is definitely something that I think I'm going to do more of in the future. And of course, I'm going to be back in the States next week, and we'll resume my So Many Levels D&D campaign, among all of the other things that I do on Twitch. So if you watched today, thank you, and I hope you'll check me out and maybe give a little follow or whatever. But in the meantime, I'll talk to you all later or on some other stream. Bye now.